Do you have a top 6 pick in your fantasy draft this season, or are you curious about my rankings in the first round and who I think you should be selecting? Well, you came to the right video, and this video was very well received last season, so I'm going to run it back again. In this video, I'm going to be going through the top 6 picks in the fantasy draft and who I think you should be taking in round 2 and round 3. I'm going to have some spicy takes in this video, so make sure you leave a comment below on what you think I did wrong in my rankings and who else you would take. This is going to be a good video, guys, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. I said this last year, and I'm going to say it again. Congratulations, you have the first pick in the draft. But this year, there are a lot more decisions you're going to need to be making versus other years, because there are 3 players that could potentially go first overall, depending on your league. And for me this season, it's between McDavid, MacKinnon, and Leon Draisaitl. Personally, I think it's between McDavid and MacKinnon. I don't think Draisaitl should be in the conversation for the number 1 pick overall. I think 2 or 3 is completely fine. But I do like the center left wing eligibility from him. But for me this season, it's between 2 players in MacKinnon and McDavid. So on my personal rankings, I picked number 1. Also, shout out to Rotoballer for this website. It's really useful to select picks. You can do it all manually, and then you can kind of simulate how your draft will go. But for this, we have the first overall pick. And for me, I think regardless, I just think McDavid is the best ceiling play possible in the NHL, where MacKinnon is more of a floor play. My concerns with MacKinnon is just the lack of goals a little bit, even though I know McDavid does. We do know that McDavid does have that 50+ goal upside when he decides to shoot the puck. And then a healthy McDavid is just the best player in the world, no questions asked. So for me, it's going to be Connor McDavid this season as my number 1 overall pick. If I'm not mistaken, I think Chris had MacKinnon as his number 1. But in the next part of the video, I'm going to be going through the differences between the 2 and who you should be pairing them with. And if I move to the draft board, I pick 24 and pick 25. Okay, so you had the first overall pick, and now we're at pick 24 and 25. So I just want to show you one thing. I'm going to jump over to another screen very shortly after this. So basically, I've simmed it based on the Yahoo ADPs, and I'll leave a link in the description below for access to those ADPs, because I can't predict how the draft will go. I maybe can predict based on what I think it'll go, but I'm going to base it just solely off ADP because that's the best data I have available to me. So when you get to the 24th pick, this is what the draft board should look like in terms of players taken, and then I can go over and go to all the players that are going to be available. So Boldy, Robertson, Dahlin, Jarvis, Hagel, Bratt, Ovechkin. So there's a lot of players on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to another sheet and just do a 1-to-1 comparison on the players that you could be taking with your back-to-back pick here at 24 and 25. So I'm flipped over to our Fantasy Puck Draft Pick Analyzer. It's one of the tools that come with our Patreon. And what I have here is I basically have MacKinnon, McDavid, and we have our projections for them. And then we have their scoring categories based on their expected value for each category if you're in a categories league. So you can see here that MacKinnon does out-edge McDavid, and that's fine. Now, it's contingent on who you're pairing them with. So at pick number 24, there are a couple options available. I think for me, the best option available is going to be Philip Forsberg. And the other best option available is going to be Rasmus Dahlin. And I know last year all I did was talk about Dahlin, but let's throw both of these players in here and just give you an idea of what it'll look like. So if we combine these together, the edge still goes to McDavid, Forsberg, Dahlin. But there are other options, and I know last year that was some of the feedback is like, give me some more options other than Rasmus Dahlin. So if we look, I can move Dahlin and we can just have Forsberg here, and let's add JT Miller, who is someone I think that could be a very valuable pick there. So if we add him in here, it slightly edges it up again. And if I go down here, let's say we get Forsberg and Panarin, who's another guy I think that should be going at this range. And it's still the slight edge. So if we're comparing the two, I think the best options are going to be MacKinnon, Forsberg, Miller, or McDavid, Forsberg, Panarin. It all depends on how you want to complement your picks. But I do think taking that number 1 defenseman is going to be incredibly important this season. So I do think that Dahlin likely should be in the mix here, no matter what. And I know that's all I talked about last year. So if we look at MacKinnon, Forsberg, Dahlin, let's do MacKinnon, Forsberg, MacKinnon, JT Miller, Dahlin, so still edges it out just slightly. But this gives you an idea of kind of who you should be looking to take. And I think for the purpose of this, I just wanted to compare McDavid and MacKinnon. But let's just do a full McDavid projection. So if you go McDavid, Forsberg, Dahlin, it's better than McDavid, JT Miller, Dahlin, based on our projections. Now, if I were to swap out Dahlin here for Philip Forsberg, and you don't go defenseman at this pick, you can see that JT Miller, Forsberg, and McDavid actually slightly edge out the group below. So I think the picks here are going to be between Miller, Forsberg, Dahlin, and Artemi Panarin on your turn. I think those 4 players are the guys you should be looking to prioritize. Even if you get one of the 4 players, I still think it's a really, really good pick at pick 24 and pick number 25. We are back for season 3 of the Fantasy Puck Patreon League. Last season, we had 12 leagues, 144 participants, and it came down to the wire. We are now reorganizing all of our leagues, promotion and relegation based on how everyone placed. We had a lot of interest. The forums are quickly filling up. So if you're interested, click the link in the description below. If you have any questions on how the FPPL works, check out our website or join our Discord and send me a quick message, and I'll be sure to answer any questions that you may have. So unfortunately, you have the second pick in the draft, but it's not really that unfortunate because the person who picked first made the decision for you on who you should be selecting. So again, for me, it's going to be Connor McDavid at number 1. If we look at the draft board. Now let's just assume hypothetically we are Lafleur Power. And pick number 2, it's between Draisaitl and MacKinnon, just like I talked about at pick number 1. But I think the obvious choice here for me personally is MacKinnon. I just think that the shot upside and the points are going to be the same. The goals will be lacking a bit, but the shot upside is really why I'm taking Nathan MacKinnon. It's so superior to a lot of players in the league, and he's up there, I would say, in the top 5 in the league for shots. Him, Matthews, Pasternak, those are probably the top 3 best shot volume players. So with Draisaitl here, we're looking at about 100 less shots than MacKinnon, but the goal upside is just massive, and so is the power play points, which is exactly what MacKinnon puts up. But for me, especially if you're in category leagues, I think that shots sometimes are hard to find, and a lot of teams seem to lack it. So for my number 2 pick in the draft, it's going to be Nathan MacKinnon. Okay, so for pick number 2, you took Nathan MacKinnon, and let's take a look at what round 2 and 3 look like. So you're going to have pick 23 and 26, and the difficulty with having this pick is that you kind of want to try and predict who your opponents can be taking at pick 24 and 25, because if it's someone you're looking at to take at 26 and you wait a little bit too long and say maybe I can grab him in the next round, there is a chance that he could be going at the pick that took Connor McDavid. So if you look here, pick 23 and 26. Now the player based on ADP is Jake Ottinger. So if we go to the draft list and we hide who's drafted, it's kind of going to be the same group of players that you're going to be taking, and not much changes because MacKinnon is the sole center position, just like McDavid. So you can't be as flexible with the positions because you don't want to handcuff yourself and take back-to-back sole center positions, because for the rest of your draft, you're going to be scrambling. There's so many good late centers to take in drafts. So let's jump over now to the draft pick analyzer. So we are at pick number 2, and we are looking in the 2nd and 3rd round here. And I have Nathan MacKinnon for both because I think he is the consensus number 2 pick in fantasy drafts this season. So who should we be pairing with MacKinnon? And I'm going to sound like a broken record, just like last year. I do think Dahlin is going to be the play here, no matter what, at this pick, because of how scarce defensemen are and how good Dahlin was last season. And his projections, again, look really good with a complimentary 128 hits, 119 blocks, and the hit numbers were down last season. So I think with MacKinnon, what you're going to get out of him is really high shot volume, kind of like, I mean, the goal scoring, we still projected him for pretty solid goals this season, but really high shot volume, good power play points, and decent goal scoring for a top 3 pick. Now, who should we be pairing him with? Well, if we want goal scoring, it's going to be Philip Forsberg. If we want more complementary stats, it's probably going to be JT Miller. And you can see between the two that Philip Forsberg slightly edges out JT Miller. They're very similar in their stats. You just get a little bit more goals versus the assists for Miller. The block volume is a bit higher. The PIMs are higher. The hits are going to be a little bit higher from JT Miller. So it's really contingent on what you're looking for. Now, MacKinnon already has elite shot volume. Maybe you don't need to go Forsberg here, but I still think it's a really, really good pick. Now, if we were to swap him out for someone like Artemi Panarin, who in my mind is almost like a little bit worse of a Nathan MacKinnon, where he does have really good counting stats. The points are going to be there. The power play point upside is going to be there as well. He has no blocks, really no hits. So I think for me, it's no question going to be Dahlin or Forsberg at this pick as well. Now, someone I didn't mention in the MacKinnon or the McDavid bit at number 1 is, if you want, you could also look at going Igor Shesterkin, who based on ADP will be available here. Now, he significantly sways the numbers here. It's because we basically are assuming that the categories are going to be win, save percentage, and goals against average. If we add saves in here, it's going to go up a little bit more significantly. So I don't mind the options here. I think it's going to be Dahlin, Forsberg, Igor Shesterkin, Panarin. Like, that's going to be the range of players you're looking for. Now, I am seeing Jack Hughes falling a little bit in drafts right now, and I do think he's completely fine to be taken here. But there's always going to be a risk with Jack Hughes. But I think if you start off with McKinnon, Forsberg, Hughes, or McKinnon, Dahlin, Hughes, there's really, really good upside there. So one other thing I want to mention here is just considering positions as well. So with Forsberg, he's a left wing only position, where with JT Miller, you get a guy that's going to be center right wing. So it does allow for a little bit more flexibility. And Panarin's a sole left wing as well. So you definitely don't want to be looking Forsberg, Panarin, because you're going to be locked into a center left wing, and have basically no flexibility in your first 3 picks. And you probably won't be able to take another left winger till later in the draft. So for me here, those are going to be the best options for you to take at pick 23 and 26. Moving on to the 3rd pick in the draft. Again, I'm going to repeat myself a little bit here, and the first 2 decisions are made for you. I think in fantasy drafts right now, there's basically a consensus top 3 picks, and then a consensus number 4 to number 8 picks. And I think they're all interchangeable. Like, there's almost no wrong pick between 1, 2, and 3, and then no wrong pick between 4 and 8, which I'll get into later in this video. But for me here, I think it's going to be McKinnon, McDavid, 1, 2, no matter what. And then, like I've been touting in the first part of the video, is I think Leon Draisaitl is the no question number 3 pick in the fantasy drafts this season. I think just the ability to get a guy with such big upside like Draisaitl, and you can also put him at the left wing position. Also, I do know in faceoff leagues, I don't play in any personally, but I do know that having a winger that takes faceoffs and is like a primary center is very, very valuable. But so if you're in a faceoff leagues, I could see that Draisaitl would be the number 1 overall pick. But for now, I'm just assuming a regular fantasy points league, because everyone plays in different style of leagues. But for me this season, it's going to be a Leon Draisaitl at the number 3 pick. So if we back it up just 1 pick here and we go to Dzingleberries, which actually I think was one of my first fantasy names back in the day when Ryan Dzingel was playing. So you took Leon Draisaitl with your 3rd overall pick, center left wing eligible, meaning there's a much easier flexibility between McKinnon and McDavid. And you're going to have pick 22 and 27. So again, I'm going to take just a quick view of the draft board. Now, the one thing that opens up here now is going to be the availability of Jack Hughes based on ADP. Again, I do think he's falling in drafts quite a bit right now. So I don't really know who else will be available here. But for me, it's going to be Jack Hughes will be available. Dahlin's still available there. And then Tage Thompson, JT Miller, Artemi Panarin. I don't think it's worthwhile to go goalie at this pick. Ottinger, by ADP, technically should go at the pick after this one. So the McKinnon pick. I don't think I'd be taking Ottinger at this pick as well. It's just way too early for goaltenders, and that's how I typically like to draft, as you know. Okay, so I tossed Leon Draisaitl in here. Now let's take a look at our options. So what I'm going to do immediately is I'm just going to toss Jack Hughes in this one. And I'm going to drop the same guys that we're seeing earlier, Philip Forsberg, and just see what the options are. So based on the numbers here and the values, Team B wins. So Forsberg actually has better counting stats overall in category leagues and in points leagues in categories leagues than Hughes does. But if we do look in a points league, and if we're summing the total points here, so this is based on our projections, we look at the totals. So Forsberg still slightly edges out Hughes here. So again, this 1758 is going to be for points leagues, and then the 1766 is also going to be for points leagues. So Forsberg slightly edges out Hughes. We are projecting Hughes for 73 games. So if I were to bump that up by like 1 or 2 games, it's going to be a little bit higher. Again, with Hughes, you do get some position flexibility as well from him. That is good to match and pair with Leon Draisaitl. Now, in terms of the counting stats, they're not really that complementary because both players don't hit, both players don't block, Both players have good shot volume and decent goal upside. I think Hughes could be a candidate for 40 goals this season. But let's mix in a couple other options. So let's say Mitch Marner hypothetically falls to this pick here, and we add Marner in here. And then let's go down and just add Artemi Panarin down here, who, again, I think is falling quite a bit in drafts. So let's see how this looks out. Still, Draisaitl, Forsberg, Panarin, they do edge them out in both categories and in points. So, Marner doesn't contribute as much as Panarin does based on our projections this season. I think just the slight edge in goals kind of gives Panarin that little bit of a bump. So I think for me here, the options are going to be between who's best available between Hughes, Marner, Forsberg, Panarin. But the thing is, going Forsberg, Panarin, like I said, is you get locked into 2 left wing positions. Draisaitl also has left wing eligibility, so you're kind of handcuffing yourself at that. So I don't mind the mix of this group of players. I still think it's fine to go Dahlin. If Werenski or Bouchard falls, it's also very good to take there if you're looking for other defensemen. So let me toss in Dahlin here. So the slight edge goes to this group, but you are getting a defenseman that has very, very elite counting stats and very elite totals in terms of the categories. Now, if I go down here and let's say I just add Zach Werenski if he's available. So actually, Werenski would be available at this pick at 22 and then at 27. Let's toss in Matt Boldy, for example. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Boldy here, who I think is going way, way too early in fantasy drafts, and I probably wouldn't be on him as much as other people are at this point. But you can see there is a slight edge here for the top group. Again, you're grabbing a defenseman. So I think if you're going with Draisaitl, it does allow for flexibility, so you can take a center here as well. The other option will be Braden Point, may potentially be available at this pick as well, instead of Jack Hughes. And you aren't handcuffing yourself because, again, Draisaitl can play on the left side. So a lot of good options here at pick number 3. This is who I'd be looking to go in the 2nd and 3rd round. Pick number 4, this is when things get a little bit iffy. And that's what I was talking about earlier with between pick 4 to 8, it could be any of the 5 players within that range. And that's Matthews, Kucherov, Makar, Pasternak, and Kirill Kaprizov. So those 3 are basically who should be going for the next 5 picks in your draft. Now, this is a really tough decision here if you have the 4th pick. I think like 4th may honestly be the worst spot to draft this season in fantasy, just because you kind of have to be the decision maker for the next 5 picks in the draft. So for me personally, I don't mind Makar here, and I think he is the 4-5 pick. But I think my number 1 guy that I'm going to be taking at the 4th overall pick, and I have to scroll down a lot, which is actually pretty sad on this website right now, is that I have to keep scrolling to find Auston Matthews, who I personally think should be the 4th best player off the board this season. The thing with Matthews is he's a 3-time Rocket Richard winner. He shoots the puck at one of the highest rates in the entire NHL. I know that Mitch Marner isn't there, and that's actually scaring people a lot right now in drafts, and I think it's scaring them a little bit too much. Matthews still possesses arguably the best shot in the entire NHL. And although he doesn't have his 60-70 point winger there with him, 60-70 assist winger with him, a lot of people are really factoring him to have one of the worst seasons Auston Matthews going into this year. And I see him falling about pick 9, pick 10 right now. But for me, he is my number 4 overall pick in drafts. But I don't think that it's a wrong idea to be taking Cale Makar at number 4 with how scarce defensemen are and with how good Cale is. But for me, it's going to be Auston Matthews at the number 4 overall pick. So at pick number 4, you took Auston Matthews. You could have taken Makar, Kucherov. I may do some scenarios with them, but I am going to do them for pick 5 and 6, so it doesn't matter. So you have pick number 21 and pick number 28. And now you're waiting 6 picks. So 6 players in between your 2 picks here, which means it's more than likely that at this point in the draft is when you start to get draft sniped, in a sense, where there's going to be guys you have your eye on that you think you can leave till pick 28 that are likely going to be drafted in these 6 picks here. And you kind of want to be able to pivot as much as you can. So I'm going to give you a few players at 28 that I think will be available and that will be applicable to pair with Matthews. So again, considering Matthews, he's just the sole center position. If we jump over here again to the projections, there are a couple interesting players to look to. I don't mind Jason Robertson in that early 3rd round. I don't mind Tim Stützle there as well with the center left wing eligibility. If I keep scrolling, again, Tage Thompson's very desirable here at the center right wing eligibility. And then defenseman, you could get a little bit interesting. I'll jump into that a little bit later with both Mackenzie Weegar and potentially Moritz Seider as well. So let's go over to the draft pick analyzer. I know I'm flip-flopping a lot, but thank you for staying with me here. So I picked 21. Mitch Marner does become available, and I'm going to toss him in here because you got to see the pair between Matthews and Marner. Now, the option at 28, again, I mentioned Mackenzie Weegar, and I want to talk about him a little bit with just how good he is for category coverage, and it's like extremely, extremely elite. You can see the shots almost 200. You can see the hits over 200, blocks almost 200. Very, very good in Cats leagues as well. Marner kind of falters in Cats leagues. You can see he's not as valuable, but in the points leagues, he's okay. It's just the counting stats really, really lack for Marner. So for me, I don't think I'm going to be taking Marner this year at all. So I picked 21. I'm not going to be recommending him to you. So let's say we go Braden Point here. I don't like the Braden Point pick because he's a sole center. And again, the counting stats may not be as desirable as the other players. So again, I like Panarin, Forsberg at this round. I don't mind Jack Hughes. So let's do Matthews, Forsberg, Weegar, and let's do Matthews, Panarin, and Dahlin, just hypothetically. So if we do this, you can actually see that Weegar, like this group actually outperforms them based on total points. You see a difference here on the total categories, the expected value for the categories. So there's a lot of options at your pick 28. Weegar is going a lot later in drafts, and you can probably wait on him for the third round, but I do think securing that number one defenseman in Weegar is really good here. Now at 28, I also don't mind you looking to take Igor Shesterkin. Again, I don't think I'd be going Jake Ottinger. Just that save percentage number really scares me with him, where I think Igor can easily be a Vezina candidate again. There's going to be a lot of the Rangers players are at discounts this season. So if I sub out Panarin, and let's say we just go JT Miller here and Dahlin, you can see that it starts to get really, really close for the category coverage here. And the points are very similar. The totals are very similar. So I think your options here are going to be at pick 21. It's going to be Hughes, Marner, Forsberg, Panarin, I think are the four guys you should be looking at that pick. I don't think you could grab Dahlin. It's fine at pick 21, but I think based on ADP, he may actually fall into the next round. So then at 28, I would likely pair, if you take a forward in your second round, in the third round, I would likely pair a defenseman here with Weegar. I don't mind Moritz Seider as well. I can toss Seider in here, and it slightly edges out this group because Seider is such an elite category coverage player. So I think your options at pick 28 are going to be Weegar, Seider, Igor Shesterkin. If you want to take a forward, I think it's going to be Panarin, JT Miller, or Jason Robertson at that pick. Again, Tage Thompson is another guy I have my eye on at pick number 28. So let's say hypothetically you go Dahlin, and then we go in here and we grab Tage Thompson. You can see that the points are really not that far off. The category is a little bit more, and you're dominating the goals category, and that's kind of why I would be a little bit more hesitant on Thompson, is because you're already grabbing one of the, if not the best goal scorer in the entire NHL, Matthews, and then you have Tage Thompson to pair with him, who's a guy that doesn't really go well with Matthews because they're kind of the same player. You can see the high shot volume here, 318, 265. You can see the goals here, 48 and 41, and then you can see the lack of hits, 70, 69, 88, 28. So I think for me here, it's definitely gonna be Matthews, a forward and a defenseman, or Matthews, defenseman and a forward will likely be the pairings for round 2 and round 3. Now we're at pick number 5, and again, I'm gonna rhyme the players back off again. So it's gonna be Makar, Pastrnak, Kucherov, and Kirill Kaprizov. So those are the next 4 picks that should be happening in your drafts this season. And I do think Makar should be the 5th overall pick, but I would never, ever say it's a wrong idea to take Nikita Kucherov here as well. A guy that's consistently putting up 110 plus points. He's one of the, if not the best power play forward in the entire league. He's a right winger, which is good because a lot of the top players, as you can see on the draft board here within the first 5 picks, they're all center eligible. So this is going to be the first winger that should be going off the board, and Nikita Kucherov doesn't have dual position eligibility. Don't think he ever will. I don't think he ever has. But for me, I do think the 5th overall pick in drafts this season is going to be Cale Makar, just because of how scarce defensemen are and the massive amount of upside. Makar could be a 100-point defenseman this season, and he has 30 goals last year, which is actually outrageous to think about. If we go look at Mikko Rantanen, had 32 goals last season as a winger. And with the scarcity of defensemen, with how good Makar is, he shoots a good amount, he blocks a good amount, the plus minus is going to be there. And these are last year's stats, and you know the power play points are going to be at the top of the league for defensemen. So for me, because of the scarcity in the position and just the overall upside that Cale Makar has every single season, he is my consensus number 5 pick off the board. Not your stepping stone. That's not really that good, but I guess it's Derek Stepan and Mark Stone. So if we look here, pick 20 and pick 29. So now you are waiting 8 total picks between your next two. So between 20 and between 29, a lot's going to happen in between as well. Like there's a lot of picks that lead up to pick number 20. A lot of guys you like that are going to be going off the draft board very, very quickly here. But with Makar, because you drafted defenseman in the first round, you can now look to go forward, which allows you to have a ton of options in round 2 and round 3. And the guy that is technically going by ADP here is going to be Braden Point. And grabbing a soul center in the second round isn't bad at all to pair with Cale Makar. So let's jump over to the trade analyzer or the draft analyzer, and let's see what's going on over there. Now with Makar here, I just want to talk about our projections quickly because I know we're going to get some questions about this. So Makar, his games played are relatively low. And because he does have some injury history in the past, he's slightly under projected. So we are projecting him to miss about 11 games this season, about 10 games this season. But when healthy, these numbers will all be up. So if you think he can play a full 82 again, we just based it off the last 3 years historical and how many games he's missed to determine our total games played. But with Makar here, he's going to be the 5th pick overall in the draft. And like I said, you can now go forward. So Braden Point is technically the next best available in the draft based on ADP. And then at pick number 29, it becomes a little bit more scarce. So let's add in Jason Robertson onto here. And we're at about 2251 and 1470, which is relatively low for that. So I picked 20. If we go, let's go Marner here, who I don't think is the pick at all. I do think it's Forsberg, but I just want to show you for hypothetical purposes. And then let's go Weegar. Let's say you draft another defenseman. You can see that the points are slightly edged out by the 2 forwards, but the category coverage is still significantly better with Mackenzie Weegar in there. So for me at pick 20, I'm okay with Braden Point, who has scored 45 plus goals in his last 3 seasons, because Makar is still a good point-getting defenseman and still really good for goals. But Point's a great complementary pick there. The only thing is, again, you're handcuffing yourself with a sole center position. And then another forward, again, I'd be looking to go for here is potentially JT Miller. So Makar, Point, Miller, and let's toss in Makar, Forsberg, who I still think should be probably going about top 15 in drafts right now, but he's not for some reason, and JT Miller. So if we look at these two comparisons, it's really, really close between the two. Miller provides you a little bit more flexibility than Point with the center right wing eligibility. But Forsberg handcuffs you with just the sole left wing. But if you look at the category coverage, this group is a lot better for categories just because of the hits that Forsberg and Miller both provide relative to just Braden Point with 26 hits. You look at the block numbers, again, higher for Forsberg, higher for JT Miller, and the shot volume is relatively the same. Miller's a little bit lower, but you have Forsberg with that high shot volume. So I wouldn't be going Hughes here. And I think with Makar, and I do get these questions a lot, actually. Is it okay to go defenseman forward? And absolutely, that is completely fine with me. If you secure yourself 2 elite defensemen, you know in fantasy drafts, there are so many elite players that you can grab in the middle part of the rounds. If you start off with 2 really good defensemen, let's say you go Makar, Werenski, for example, the rest of your draft can just be forwards for the next 4 or 5 rounds while everyone else is trying to scramble for defensemen. So one thing I want to stress is don't be scared to be taking 2 defensemen, because a lot of people tend to be a little bit more hesitant, but a lot of people are going to be trying to make trades for you. A lot of people are going to be scrambling for defensemen. If you have 2 really good ones off the bat, this always happens in drafts where there is just a flow of defensemen that go in a row, or a flow of goaltenders that go in a row. And if you take 2 early, you don't have to worry about that happening and you panicking and saying, man, I have to take someone that's 60 picks higher than their ADP because 12 defensemen just went in the first 3 rounds, which if you watch the FPPL Division 1 and Division 2 last season, that's exactly what happened. So I think the picks here, I pick number 20. If Bouchard or Werenski are available at pick 20, I think I'm okay with it. I'm a little hesitant on Werenski this season. But I think Forsberg will be your best available, and there's a good chance he will be available. If it's not going to be them, I'm fine with Jack Hughes there. I don't think I like the pairing between Makar and Marner. I just think the lack of shots from Marner kind of scares me a little bit here. But I think your options are going to be JT Miller, Forsberg, Panarin. I don't mind Jason Robertson there again in the second round, or in the third round, sorry. I also don't mind Igor Shesterkin there in the third round. But I think these are going to be the best options that you should be looking for in pick 20 and pick 29 at the draft position number 5. Okay, so we were halfway there. You were at pick number 6 in the draft, which I think is a sweet spot. I think between 6 and 8, it's kind of a sweet spot there because the picks are kind of laid out for you. Like, say it goes Kucherov, Matthews, then you get Makar at 6. If it goes Pastrnak, Kucherov, then you got Matthews or Makar to decide on at number 6. So there's a lot of options for you here. But I think the no question pick for me at this choice is going to be Nikita Kucherov. My concerns with Pastrnak and Kaprizov is that Kaprizov can't really stay healthy, but when he is healthy, he's one of the best point per game player. So if we look at fantasy points per game, he's one of the top in the league. He just can't seem to play a full 82. If he does, he's probably going to be a Hart Trophy candidate. But with David Pastrnak here, I just think with the regression of the Bruins, it may not fare well for him. It's kind of crazy. I want you to go and look at the Bruins stats from last season. It's crazy to see that Pastrnak had 106 points, and if I'm not mistaken, nobody else had more than 50. So it's kind of wild to see what's going on in Bruins land. Their power play may be considerably worse this year. They don't really have a lot of options up front. So for me, it's going to be Nikita Kucherov here, one of the league's best power plays, one of the league's best power play players, and on a very, very elite team in the Tampa Bay Lightning who finished first last season in the Metropolitan Division. So I'm going to be going with Nikita Kucherov here. I think it's a really safe pick. Very good floor, very good ceiling. And this is how the first 6 picks in the fantasy drafts should go this season. You are drafting from the 6th position. Too Fair gone. Eric Fair. Kind of funny. So I picked 19 and pick 30. This is now you have 10 picks between your second and your third round, which gets a little bit more dicey. And 6 seems like a pretty good spot right now because there's about 12 picks in between your your first and second round, and then 10 picks between your third and fourth round. Your second and third round. Sorry, I'm getting all my numbers mixed up here. But the way it looks is that you're basically consistently picking every single round. Whereas if you have the first pick, you have to wait quite a bit. Like you got to wait 23 picks just for your second rounder. And then you have a ton of waiting to do. So the whole draft, you're just sitting there idle, watching all your players go. But at the 6th pick in the draft, not only do you get the third best of the big 6, the big 5 in the middle here between Matthews all the way to Pastrnak, you also don't have to watch your players get taken. So I picked number 19. Again, I'm going to show you guys the draft board. So we do have Jack Hughes here. Evan Bouchard does now open up at this pick. I'm a little hesitant, a little bit early for me. Dahlin's still here, and the whole group that was for the first 6 picks. So let's jump over to the draft analyzer. We have Nikita Kucherov in here. Just overall, just such a beast in fantasy and such a beast in the NHL in general. I actually just watched a clip of that crazy, like when he flipped his stick over and made that wild pass over the Islanders defenseman a point and then ended up scoring on the 2-on-1. That was phenomenal to watch. But with Kucherov here, I picked number 6, right wing only position. And you have the 19th overall pick. So if I were to put Bouchard in here, based on our projections, and if I were to put Dahlin in here, so you can see that Dahlin slightly edges out Bouchard in both points and the totals as well. So I think Dahlin is the superior pick over Bouchard. And I think because Kucherov is a forward, I would likely be going Dahlin at pick number 19. And this may seem crazy early, and maybe you can wait on Dahlin until pick number 30, but I don't think he would fall that late in competitive drafts. I still think he's going to be going within the top 25. So let's say you go and you reach and you grab Dahlin, and now you have some other options to take. So I think JT Miller is a really good pair at this pick. Because Kucherov doesn't really provide hits, provides above average shot volume, above average goal volume, best in the league for assists, other than maybe McDavid. They're really, really close. So JT Miller just assists with those counting stats that Rasmus Dahlin is kind of bringing to the table as well. So gives you good block volume, gives you good hit volume. I think it's a really strong pick there. The other options, again, you could look at Jason Robertson. You can see that it's just a slight edge between Robinson and Miller in points leagues, 24-27, 2400. The category leagues is where really the big difference comes from, again, because Miller is just such a beast in terms of categories. Now, let's say you don't want to go defenseman here. You think Dahlin's too early. And let's say you go Philip Forsberg. So I'm going to, oops. So I'm going to toss Forsberg into here. Not Mario Ferrero, come on. So I'm going to toss Forsberg into here. I'm going to toss Forsberg into the bottom. And let's just get a comparison of the two. So you can see the shot volume's good. The power play points are very, very good. The goals, assists, everything looks relatively good across the board. You're at 1,800 points already. Is it bad to go Mackenzie Weegar with your 30th pick? Not the worst thing in the world. It gets you up to 2,500. If I were to toss Miller in here, you can see that it's a slight edge. But again, you have 3 forwards in here. And there's a very, very small edge. About 28 points between the totals here. And then a slight 55 difference between the totals and the scoring values for the category leagues. So there's a lot of options in the 30th overall pick. I'm fine with Seider. I'm fine with Weegar. It's all contingent on what you take in the second round. So if you go Dahlin, you're going to have to be taking a forward at 30, which I think Miller, Panarin, both of those aren't bad picks at pick 30. I don't mind Jason Robertson. Again, I think it's a little bit too early for Matt Boldy. So those are some of the options I think I'd be looking to take. It's all contingent on what you do with the 19th overall pick. So if you're going Bouchard, you're probably going to have to either go Mackenzie Weegar because Bouchard doesn't really provide elite block or hit volume, as you can see with 171. So you could go Mackenzie Weegar to help with those counting stats to pair him perfectly. And JT Miller is another great option just to help you with those counting stats. So this is kind of what I'd be looking to do at pick 19 and pick 30 if you have 6th overall in your draft. That will do it for the draft strategy video from pick number 1 to pick number 6. This is part 1 of 2 of the series. So expect next week, in the next couple of days, the draft strategy for pick 7 to pick number 12. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video.